Yeah, not quite uplifting stuff that we listen to from the book of Lamentations, sometimes known as the Lamentations of Jeremiah, the prophet, and in our Bible, unlike the Jewish Bible or the original Old Testament, inserted after the book of the prophet Jeremiah, which is, I don't think, its proper place. Because Jeremiah most unlikely was the author. He didn't write it, I think. There is a reference in the book of Chronicles, chapter 35, verse 25, where it says Jeremiah wrote a lament after King Josiah was killed in war, or when he died, and that's another lament, which is not this book. A beautiful collection of poems, of hymns that were most probably used in public worship in the temple. The book of Lamentations originated probably after the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem in 587 before Christ BC, or before the Common Era, as is more correct these days in scholarly literature to say. 587, when Jerusalem was destroyed and the temple was also totally destroyed by the Babylonians. And if one looks at it more objectively, you could say it's probably undeservedly destroyed, the city, because at that stage you had two big superpowers in the world. It was Egypt, and then on the other end it was Babylon. And Babylon had Israel, or the kingdom of Judah at that stage. It was the remnant of the kingdom of Israel, the combined kingdom, had Judah as a vassal state. There's also the mention in the scripture that we listen to, she has become a vassal. And a vassal is more or less like a colony. A superpower or an empire would say, all right, I'll take over your country or your land. You will pay tribute or taxes to me, and I will grant you protection in return. When your security is threatened, we will be there to take care of you. So Judah was a vassal of Babylon, or the Babylonian Empire, but looking towards the future, they thought it would perhaps be better to side secretly with Egypt. But the secret didn't stay a secret for long, and then Babylon responded like a proper empire. They first moved through Israel, Judah going to Egypt, and they defeated Egypt in battle to become the lone superpower, and then they returned on their way back to their home country and did a proper job to a vassal that stabbed them in the back. So Jerusalem was sacked properly, the temple destroyed. And this is the lament of the people remaining, and perhaps some of those that were taken into exile as well. It is beautiful poetry, as I said, and especially chapter 5 was composed and functioned later on, I think, as hymns used when there was a national calamity or a national crisis. It is acrostic literature, which means there are 22 stanzas or verses according to the number of the letters in the Jewish alphabet. So highly stylistic, beautiful stuff if you can look at the original language, and it's even, I think, visible in the translated language as well, the poetry there. The content of it is agony of Israel and the shock and the trauma of God seemingly deserting his people. Letting this happen to God's city, letting this happen to God's people and God's temple. How was this possible? And there is beautiful imagery and symbolism being used, especially in the first chapter. And we listen to some of that. which I don't think we can fully grasp because much of it is no longer part of our world, but the city of Jerusalem and the people of Israel being portrayed and speaking as a widow sitting at the gates of a destroyed city. And the terrible words, the words that grab you, and if you're an attentive listener or a reader, will convey something of the shock and the sorrow, the brokenness reflected in that condition. Is it nothing to you, you that pass by? Look and see if there's a sorrow like my sorrow. I've often wondered about the indifference that people must experience in many settings when there is the indifference of the passerby. And perhaps the unspoken words in the hearts of those in that condition. Am I nothing to you? Are we nothing to you? Is this suffering, this condition, is that nothing to you? I wonder often when we see now and then, because we are sensitive viewers and we have to be protected from the images of cities bombed to rubble and the terrified faces of people or those suffering and that have to live in those conditions, what they must think of us turning off or switching channels and so forth. Fortunately, they're most probably not aware of it. But one doesn't have to look far afield to find examples of such suffering. It is in our midst as well. And one terrain where I think it is increasingly evident, though it has a low profile, is in the number of people that are killed and that are dying due to substance abuse, and especially overdoses. And I hesitate to mention it because it is so that many of our families, and some who are here today, have been exposed to that, where a close family member have suffered that fate. And I don't want to cause more suffering in the process. But I also think it is time that we no longer look away. It is time that we as society and as church at least acknowledge, yes, there is immense suffering due to this substance abuse. It is time for us to acknowledge the killing fields around us and in our midst. It is time for us to say, we do not just want to pass by as if you and your situation is nothing to us. There is no easy solutions like most of the complex societal problems. The substance abuse, it is probably, and specifically opioid abuse, it is properly, a perfect storm of legislation being bought, of over-eagerness in the prescription of painkillers, based on the societal belief that nobody should suffer pain, and there is a pill to cure everything and anything, you just have to up the dosage. Then all will be well. Other factors as well. But I think it will be good if we can, as part of a social justice awareness, look at this as well. It was mentioned during the congregational meeting also that we had about the business meeting about the use of alcohol. And I think it is a valid point. And as we try as a congregation in this perilous political time to find our way in how to address social justice issues, I think the difficulty and the complexity of informing ourselves and speaking about it and addressing it should not deter us from being engaged. We can quarrel with each other and be highly upset and differ about, for instance, gun violence, which is one of those red flag issues, a Red Sea issue, I call it always. When you say gun violence, it's like the Red Sea parting in front of Moses. It just happens. But I think opioid and substance abuse is something where we can find common ground. And as God's people, say to one another, and to those who may not be part of our congregation, say to the world, to our representatives, this issue and the people involved, the people affected by it, and this disease in society, we are no longer just passing by as if it is nothing to us. We share in the suffering, we share in the pain. We extend the willingness to be and create hope, as we said in the beginning of the service, when we shared the words, hope is created where expectations and commitment meet. Let us not set the expectations too low. Let our commitment be sufficient to create hope. Amen.